Let me first introduce the topic and the author to all of you for the today webinar. The topic of today webinar is My Wealth After Me, and the author of the topic is me. Academically, I am a graduate in economics from Delhi University and a fellow member of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and associate member of Institute of Company Secretaries of India with a degree in law also. I am practicing the profession of chartered accountancy in Delhi, India, and has experience of 35 years specializing in income tax matters, litigation and personal wealth advising. In relation to the topic of my wealth after me, we all accumulate wealth, movable as well as immovable, during our lifetime. From movable wealth, I mean the money lying in our bank accounts, in saving bank or fixed deposits, shares in demat and mutual funds holdings, gold, jewelry and other personal assets. Immovable properties are land, house or any other commercial property. The first question, therefore, before everybody is that what will happen to my properties after my death? The answer to this question is dependent on the answer to another question, and the question is whether I have expressed my wish about devolution of my properties. If yes, then my properties goes to the persons about whom I have expressed my wish. In case no, then the properties goes to my legal heirs in accordance with law. The second question before everybody is that what if I have already appointed a nominee for my movable wealth? For this, we have to understand what is a nominee. Is the owner of my property after my death, or is he only a receiver but not the owner? This is in spite of the fact that the bankers allow a nominee to withdraw the money lying in my bank account after my death and does not ask him any questions about the ownership, etc. Similar to bank accounts, a nominee can also be appointed for demat and insurance policies. Legally, it is said that a nominee is only a power of attorney of a person after his death. Bombay High Court, in fact, in a judgment in 2016, held that a nominee does not override the law of succession in India. A nomination is made with a view to ensure that the estate of the deceased is protected until such time the legal representative of the deceased can take appropriate steps towards succeeding to such estate. Let us take an example of a bank account. In a bank account, an account holder fills Form DA1 to appoint a nominee. This is being done as per the provisions of Banking Regulations Act 1949. Now, in Form DA1, kindly note that after the signatures of the account holder appointing a nominee, there is a place for two witnesses with their name, address, place, date and signatures. With this fact, let us also understand what is a will. A will is a desire or a wish of a person for bequeathing of his properties after his death, with witnesses witnessing that he has expressed such desire in writing and has signed that paper expressing his desire before them. And if it is so, then can't we say that the nomination is a will of the person about bequeathing of his bank account after his death, expressed by him by filing form number DV1 and witnesses witnessing the same? In my opinion, we can say that, and this line of argument is strong and can be done before any court of law. But considering that nominee being the owner of a debatable issue, and therefore we would like to keep it in mind while planning our succession plan. So we have understood by now that the answer to my wealth after me is dependent on whether I have written a will or not. Well, will is nothing but expression of my desire about bequeathing of my properties after me. Let us first understand, if I have not written a will, then what? What will happen? Then after my death, my properties devolve upon my legal heirs in accordance with law. And the relevant law in this case is Hindu Succession Act 1956. So let us understand to whom Hindu Succession Act is applicable and what does it says about devolution of properties. Hindu Succession Act is applicable to person who by religion are Hindu, Buddhist, Jains and Sikhs. A Hindu is a person whose both parents were Hindu, or if only one parent is Hindu, then he was brought up as a Hindu. Now in this presentation, whenever I use the words Hindu, then it includes Buddhist, Sikhs and Jains. Section 8 to 13 of the Act provides for devolution of properties of a male Hindu, and section 14 to 17 provides for devolution of properties of a female Hindu. The Act has a schedule and the different heirs are specified in class 1 and class 2 of the schedule. And the rules for devolution of properties of a male Hindu are, the basic rule is that in case heirs are alive in class 1, then properties goes to those heirs. In case no heir is alive in class 1, then the properties goes to heirs specified in class 2. In case no heir is alive in class 1 and class 2, then it goes to the agnates. In case no heir is alive in class 1 and 2 and there are no agnates, then it goes to the cognates. Now let us understand class 1 relatives. The prime heirs in this class are mother, wife and children. Children legitimate as well as illegitimate. Whoever here is alive in the prime heirs, the property goes to them in equal proportion. For example, if a person is survived by a mother, wife and one son and one daughter, then 25% of the property goes to each. In case a person is survived by, say, only wife and son, then the property goes to 50% to each of them, and so on. A son is always represented in this class by his wife and children, while a daughter is represented only by her children. Husband of the daughter is not included since he inherits his father's properties under the Act. Wife and children, family of predeceased son and predeceased son of a predeceased son are included in class 1. But please note that such family gets share of only of its prime member, whose family it is. For example, if the share of a predeceased son was, say, one third, with wife and daughter of the deceased getting one third share each, then wife and children of the predeceased son gets only one third share equally among them. Similar is the with predeceased son of a predeceased son. Children of only predeceased daughter are included in class 1, and they also get share only of their predeceased mother. For example, if a share of a predeceased daughter, say, is one third, with wife and son of the deceased getting the one third share each, then the children of the predeceased daughter gets only one third share equally among themselves. In class 2, in case there is no heir alive in class 1, then only class 2 becomes applicable. And the rules for this class are: class 2 is divided in 8 parts. First part is father, and in case father is alive, then 100% of the properties goes to him, and other parts will not be applicable. But in case father is not alive, then the second part comes into play. The second part has 4 heirs: son's daughter's son, son's daughter's daughter, brother and sister. In case any of these are alive, then property goes to all the alive heirs of this part in equal proportion. In case no heir is alive in second part, then third part comes into play, and this part again has 4 heirs: daughter's son's son, daughter's son's daughter, daughter's daughter's son, and daughter's daughter's daughter. In case any of these are alive, then property goes to all the alive heirs of this part in equal proportion, and so on. Agnates. If no heirs are alive in class 1 and class 2, then the properties goes to the agnates. Agnates are the persons related by blood or adoption through males. Cognates. If no heirs are alive in class 1 and class 2 and there is no agnate, then the properties goes to the cognates. Cognates are the persons related by blood or adoption through females. In case no heir is alive in class 1, class 2 and there are no agnates and cognates, then the properties goes to the government. Female Hindu. In case of female Hindu, the devolution is to the heirs specified in section 17 of the Act. And here also, the heirs are in 4 parts. And in case there are heirs alive in the first part, then the properties goes to them equally. And in case there is no heir in part 1, then to the heirs of second part only, and so on. For example, sons, daughters, children of predeceased son or daughters, and husband are provided in part 1. And so if any of these is alive, then all the properties of the female Hindu goes to these alive in this part in equal proportion. In case there is no heir alive in this part, then the properties goes to the second part, which contains heirs of husband, and in case they are also not alive, then it goes to the mother and father, which are in third part, and so on. Some other important provisions of the Hindu Succession Act are that the Act is applicable to any child, legitimate or illegitimate, at least one of whose parent is a Hindu. Any person who is a convert or reconvert to Hindu. HUF property shall devolve by survivorship of co-partners and not according to Hindu Succession Act. Property inherited by Hindu female from her father or mother in the absence of her children or children of predeceased children goes to the heirs of father. Similarly, properties from father-in-law and mother-in-law in the absence of her children or children of predeceased children goes to the heirs of husband. An unborn child in womb at the time of death shall have the same right as if he was born. Now, the essentials of a will are: testator is a person, one who is writing a will. Beneficiaries are those named in the will as beneficiaries. Executor is the one who will execute the will after the death of testator. Witnesses are those who witnesses that the testator has signed in their presence. The others are: will must be in writing, it cannot be oral. Will must be dated. Will must be witnessed by at least two witnesses who witnesses that the testator has signed in their presence. A beneficiary is not advised to be witness. Although not mandatory by law, but a will is advised to be registered. Now, what is the benefit of registration? A will is registered with the office of the sub-registrar in a similar manner as sale deed of an immovable property is registered. The testator with two witnesses goes there in front of the sub-registrar and they are photographed there, which is also affixed on the copy of the registered will. This process created indirectly the genuine validity of a will, which helps in case of a dispute. Drawbacks of a will. By law, a probate is mandatory in Maharashtra, Bengal and Tamil Nadu, while in other states it is not mandatory. Now, what is a probate? A probate is an order from the court about the validity of a will. The executor has to apply to the court for issue of a letter of probate. Stamp duty is also payable on issue of probate, but is not a very large sum. For example, maximum duty payable in Maharashtra is rupees 75,000 and in Bengal it is rupees 50,000 and in Tamil Nadu it is rupees 25,000. But it takes almost 6 to 8 months in obtaining a probate from the court. So it is a time consuming process. In Maharashtra, Bengal and Tamil Nadu, the properties cannot be transferred to the beneficiaries in accordance with a will unless a probate is obtained, while in other states, probate is not necessary. There is another way one can plan a succession, and this is through making private trusts. Let us understand about the private trust in context with succession planning. Principally, in case of succession plan, there can be two types of trusts. One is where beneficiaries are specified and their shares are determinate. We call these trusts as determinate trusts. Here, the beneficiaries are known, they are specified in the trust deed, and their shares are also determinate and is specified in the trust deed. The second type of trusts are where beneficiaries are not specified, or if they are specified, then their shares are not determinate. We will call these as discretionary trusts. Now, the first kind of trust, which are determinate trust, the income tax is chargeable on the shares of the respective beneficiaries on rates as applicable to them, considering their total income in their hands. Although tax can be either imposed on the trustees as a representative SSE or in the hands of a beneficiary themselves. So this means that the beneficiaries, whatever income they have, the trust income will also be included in that, and whatever the rate of income tax is applicable, the income of the trust will be taxed at that rate. In case this trust includes profits and gains from business, then the whole of the income is taxed at maximum marginal rate, with the exception of a trust declared under a will exclusively for the benefits of dependent relatives, and such trust being the only trust so declared by the person. Now, the maximum marginal rate is 30% plus surcharge plus education cess. In case of discretionary trust, the tax is chargeable always at maximum marginal rate. Whatever the income of the discretionary trust is, it will be taxed at the maximum marginal rate, which is 30% plus surcharge plus education cess. Now, the exceptions where a trust is not liable to be taxed at maximum marginal rate in case of discretionary trusts are: none of the beneficiary is a beneficiary under any other trust, and none of them has income more than the maximum amount liable to tax. So there are two conditions: none of the beneficiaries should be beneficiary in any other trust, and the second condition is none of them has income more than the maximum amount liable to tax. This condition has to be seen every year while determining the tax rate at which the trust will be taxed. The second exception is the trust has been declared under a will, and such trust is the only trust declared by the person. In the above two exceptions, tax is charged on AOP at normal rates. AOP means association of persons, and the rates applicable are the rates which are applicable to individuals. Thus, tax wise, a trust is not an advantageous entity unless it falls under the exceptions and is taxed at rates as are applicable to individuals. Now, essentials of a trust are that it involves settlers, trustees, and trust deed. Trust deed must be in writing. Settler can himself also become one of the trustee. Trust need not be. Trust needs to be an irrevocable trust. It cannot be a revocable trust. So that means the properties once transferred cannot be reversed. Assets can be transferred to a trust for relatives without any tax liability. However, on transfer of immovable assets, stamp duty is payable. Since assets are transferred to the trust while person is living, there is no necessity of a probate. Trusts are principally not tax efficient, being taxed at maximum annual rate in most of the cases. Trusts are liable to annual maintenance expenses. One of the reasons for going for a trust in succession planning is to avoid inheritance tax. Presently, the inheritance tax in India is nil. There is no law on inheritance tax. But it is expected, and it has been in news, unofficial news from the last 2-3 years, that the government is interested in putting inheritance tax on rich or super rich persons. Now, once we have considered a will, trusts, and how the properties devolves in case of succession, I put in some strategies which will hold good for everybody. Immovable properties, I suggest that one should hold these in joint accounts. It should be in joint name. And the second name should be of the person to whom you wish to be a beneficiary after your death of that property. Similarly, bank accounts should be in joint account, joint names. Second name should be of the person to whom you wish to be a beneficiary after your death. You are also requested to make nominations of children in the bank accounts. Similar is the position with DMAT. They should be held in joint names, and nomination should also be there for the children. In case of mutual funds, I advise that make all investments in mutual funds through your DMAT. Now, why you should make your mutual funds through a DMAT? It is only for the purpose of safeguarding the property after your death. For example, your legal heirs after your death can immediately know what holding you are holding in shares and mutual funds by looking at your DMAT account, in case you have made mutual funds investments also through your DMAT account. And in case you have not made investments through your DMAT account in mutual funds, then there is a chance of your legal heirs missing your investments in mutual funds in case they could not locate any paper for any particular investment in a mutual fund. Now, another matter is, I will advise that write a will of yourself as well as the joint owner and declare your nominee as the beneficiary entitled for that particular asset where he or she has been nominated by you. I'll explain this further in when we'll discuss a draft will at the later part of this webinar. The next is register your will. I have already told that there are benefits of registration in spite of the fact that registration of a will is not mandatory. You are advised to register your will. Create a private discretionary trust in case you desire to pass on to the beneficiaries only the income from the asset, only the income from your asset, but not the asset itself, and that too by creating a trust under a will. Now, I have included a draft will and I will just read it so that you can know what all must be included in a will. I, so and so, son of so and so, residing at so and so, hereby revoke all my wills and codicils, if any, and make this my last will on so and so day of so and so year. Now, here I will explain the codicils are principally an amendment of your will. The original document of a will is called a will, and any document subsequently written for amending the original will is called a codicil. where I am now so and so years old and desire to write my final will, and whereas I am possessed of considerable movable and immovable properties which are out of my self earned money, and I have the absolute powers of disposal over the same. And whereas I am anxious to make necessary arrangements in respect of enjoyment of my properties after my lifetime, so that unnecessary misunderstanding and consequential wasteful litigation between the matters of my family, between the members of my family and people dear to me may be avoided. Therefore, I am executing this last will and testament of mine on my own free will, voluntarily, without any compulsion or pressure of any person, with a sound disposing mind, and declare as follows. I hereby revoke all former wills and codicils made by me at any time hereto before. I have my spouse, so and so, please name her here or name him here, one son, so and so, one daughter, so and so, who will be entitled to succeed to my properties. Here you should specify your legal heirs, to whom you wish to be the beneficiaries under your will. That I bequeath my immovable property to my spouse, who is also the joint owner of the property, so that she becomes an absolute owner of it after my demise. That I bequeath my bank accounts to my spouse, who is also the joint owner of the property, so that she becomes an absolute owner of it after my demise. That I bequeath my demat account or accounts to my spouse, who is also the joint owner of the property, so that she becomes an absolute owner of it after my demise. That I bequeath all my immovable properties not mentioned above to my spouse, so that she becomes an absolute owner of it after my demise. In case of my spouse demising before me or along with me, without writing his or her will, my children, namely so and so, shall bequeath all of my wealth in the form of immovable and movable property owned by me at the time of my demise equally among them. That all my liabilities, if any, at the time of my demise shall be borne by my spouse or my children, as the case may be, out of the immovable and movable properties inherited under this will by them. In witness whereof the above named testator has signed this will here under the day and year first written above. Now here date, place and testator signatures will be there. Then witness will be there, who will say that we, the witnesses, hereby confirm that the testator, namely Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, has signed this will in our presence. Then witness number 1 and 2 respectively will write their name, their father's name, their address, and they will sign the will. Now this draft will has been drafted with the basic presumption that all of the properties, all of my properties goes to my spouse after me, and after her or him it goes to my children. Kindly note, therefore, in this will a paragraph has been written that in case a spouse demising before me or along with me without writing his or her will, my children will bequeath all of my property. So this was all in the webinar today. I hope I have given you some knowledge about what will happen to your wealth after you. And you must plan in a manner which you actually want to. The manner of the properties going to your legal heirs after you has to be according to your wishes, nobody else, only your wishes. With this, I finish this webinar and now invite any questions